Whether you're a suburban athlete or an Olympic champion, you've got to work hard to get results. We've put over 15 years experience into developing Active Man, combining vitamins, minerals and proteins. Active Man helps provide you with the nutrients you need to optimize performance and assist recovery. Discover the Active Man range, now available. Active Man, power up.
Welcome to this week's Power Progress podcast, and I have amazing guest speaker, Craig Gillespie, which we just discussed before, and it's actually from Ireland. Although, are you actually from Scotland?
Yes, yeah. So I was born in Glasgow, but brought up in Edinburgh, and now I live near Glasgow again.
Oh, amazing. And obviously, you specialise in branding, so obviously we can go into your story. But I'm going to read out this title because this is what we're going to go into. Why you should create a brand that some people will hate. So we'll go into that a little bit because some people might think, oh, that doesn't make sense to me. So you can go into that a bit more. But first of all, it'd be really interesting to hear your backstory is how you maybe had some struggles with branding yourself.
Yeah, a little bit. I kind of came from a background of working in agencies in different design studios throughout Scotland, and always had this idea that I could kind of do it better than my bosses were doing, or there were some things that were great about what they were doing and some things that weren't so great. And I think I've always had a bit of a spirit of wanting to do my own thing. So I always had this idea at the back of my head, and I actually came up with a name for my business before I started my business.
Wow.
Which is Total Brandits, which I came up with on a cycling holiday in Mexico, of all places. Which is why there's a kind of a bit of a Mexican theme around my branding. But yeah, when I eventually sort of took the leap to go out on my own, I had lots of connections and people that I knew from the industry, or people that I'd worked with previously, or freelance project that I'd worked on. But when you start to kind of try to get outside of that inner little circle, people just don't know who you are. And people will be approached by freelancers or even other agencies. So trying to make yourself stand out in that kind of saturated market, that was where my sort of whole journey on my own branding really started, because even early on I realized how important it was to stand out, but do something that's memorable as well. Because you know yourself that if you're approached by somebody who wants to do all your design or create a new website for you, you might not be in a position where you want to do it, but it might be 6 months or a year down the line. So you somehow have to make sure that you're memorable, just in that initial sort of contact that you have with people, whether it's through follow-ups or whether it's just creating a brand or something that people will come back to. So I use this kind of Mexican theme. You see, I've got a sombrero hanging behind me. So my packages are all have a Mexican theme. Like my main top package, where I create everything to start a business or start a brand, that's called the whole enchilada. Then I have another one which is called the poncho, which is kind of where it's kind of like we've got you covered. And then a rebranding package, which is called the hot sauce. So it's kind of just adding a little bit extra in there. And this new package, which is called a sombrero. And when people sign up, they get one of my sombreros. So it's just little things like that that people will remember because it's kind of quite different, but there's also a bit of a story that's attached to it.
I like it. Very often people, as I say, when they go away from their natural environment where they're from, they can very often get these sort of breakthroughs where they realise they want to do something different, or they're missing their calling, as it were. And you had to be in Mexico to discover it, and you created this name as well. But carry on.
So I mean, like I said, that it was actually a sponsored cycle for Macmillan Cancer. And it was 8 days. We went from coast to coast, right the way across Mexico. I think it was about 600 miles in 8 days. So I had no intention of thinking about work, and that was the last thing on my mind. But you're right. It's funny how these kind of little things kind of spark into your mind when you're not focusing on your business or what you're going
Yeah.
to do next, that's when the creativity kind of hits you.
Yeah. It's taking you
Um,
out of everyday life, isn't it, as well? You know, the usual day-to-day business. Sometimes you've got to take yourself out and need
yeah,
sort of creativeness or just things pop in your mind a bit more.
yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. And like environment is such an important thing for me, especially because I have certain times when I need to be creative, and sometimes I'll take myself outside of the home office and I'll go somewhere and do it, or particularly if I need to do admin kind of stuff, I'll go to a Starbucks or
Yeah.
something like that because I can
Yeah.
weirdly, because of the noise that goes on there, it helps me
Yeah.
concentrate.
Totally agree with you there. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, your environment is really, really important, and knowing that, okay, if I need to be creative, then I'll go to a couple of places that I that works for me. And like I say, if I'm doing kind of boring admin stuff, if I was doing it at my home office, I'll go off and do something else. And
Yeah. You've got to take yourself out of distractions, haven't you? And in a funny way,
yes,
whilst you go into these restaurants or Starbucks, because I do the same, it for some reason it
yeah,
makes you focus a bit more because like I said, there's loads of noise around and all that, but it's almost like a bit like Clark Kent getting into a
yeah,
Superman outfit. You need a different place
yeah.
to get focus on certain things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I've definitely found that, and I think I found that out the hard way. I've always been working at home before it was kind of cool to be
Yeah,
working at home.
yeah,
And yeah, I did find that there would be a day or two that would be completely lost because I'm just caught up in distractions and not doing it. So it's like, okay, I need to take myself out of that environment,
yeah.
and go somewhere and do
What
something
year
else.
was it that you had that when you was in Mexico? What year was that?
So that was about 6 years ago. And I only sort of fully launched my full-time business 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So not that long before COVID hit. So it wasn't, well, I thought at the time it wasn't great timing, but it turned out to be good timing. But
Mm.
yeah, I did. I sat on like I say, I came up with the name quite early on, and then I sat on it and sat on it for a long time. It took me quite a long time to actually be bold and brave enough to go out there and kind of do it eventually. So looking back, I kind of think I should have done it quicker, but at the same time, I maybe needed to kind of do all the things that I did in between to
Yeah.
get me to the right place. So yeah, it's all worked out so far for the best.
That's brilliant. So when you first launched it, did it purely go from just designs and then you built into maybe coaching a bit more with the branding side? How did it sort of lead to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's just kind of been a natural progression. But yeah, just I was working one to one with clients. I was lucky enough that I got a really good retainer client. I designed a couple of healthy living and lifestyle magazines. So they've been my kind of core business, and I had that from day one. So that's been a really good platform to kind of start from. And then from there, it's been kind of started off with smaller kind of projects, even things like doing flyers and business stationery and things like that, to then slowly just building that reputation up to be able to work on bigger branding projects.
Mm.
So whether it's a brand new business, and creating everything around it, even from the name all the way through to social media strategies and creating all the visuals around it, I find that a lot more rewarding
Yeah.
than just kind of working on a flyer or a brochure for something. So you get to learn the sort of the business inside out,
Yeah.
from discussions with the clients, but also you kind of understand what their goals are and where they want to get to. So you can sort of look into the future and think, okay, if we want to be there in 3 years, what do we need to do and how do we need to make this brand show up today so that it will get to that point in say 3 years time.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure you start with people who've maybe got a business and they're ticking over, but they've got to a bit of frustration. So therefore, it'd be you almost like someone who's disassociating, looking at their business from the outside and seeing
Yeah,
what they need to change, and then you can build the brand around that. And I guess that's where this title comes in, isn't it? Why you should create a brand
yeah,
that some people will hate. So let's go
yeah,
into that a bit more.
yeah. So again, it kind of comes from trying to create. I use that as a kind of a lead magnet, and send it to prospective clients to get a reaction, but also for me as well, somebody who will be able to take that kind of comment and see it for what it is.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people that I like working with. So if somebody took it the wrong way, then it's almost like great, because it's like the Marmite effect.
Yeah.
It's the love and hate. So
Yeah.
people will either love my brand, or I might offend them by saying something like that, and
Yeah.
that's good, because then that kind of rules them out of me working with them.
Polarization, you're going to get one,
Yes.
but not both. So you'd rather have them love you, if you like, rather than just in betweeny, where you're not going to.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the vanilla thing. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be vanilla. You want to be kind of at one end of the spectrum, so that you do attract the right kind of people. But yes, so I use that as an initial way to kind of try and speak to people, and kind of create some leads.
Yeah.
And obviously, what it's really about is creating a brand that people love. And by doing that, you will have people on the opposite end. Like, I always talk about having an ideal client. I'm sure everybody hears about ideal clients, but the analogy that I like to use is like an ice cream shop. If you owned an ice cream shop, almost everybody likes ice cream. Um, so everybody could essentially become a customer. But I like to think of it in three different ways. So you've got a returning customer, someone who comes back a lot. So someone who is a repeat customer. Someone who's brand loyal, so they'll walk past or drive past three other ice cream stores to come to yours because they love it so much. And then also someone who's a brand ambassador, so somebody who will tell all their friends and tag you in social media and take loads of photos and talk about your brand all the time. So for me, that's what an ideal client should be, is a combination of those three things. And by creating a brand that people love, that's the ideal client that we're always doing everything sort of to be focused on. Because even for me as a designer or the client, it doesn't really matter what we think,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. Obviously, you still have to connect with your own brand, but the real important person in that equation is always your customers and your ideal clients. And how do we speak to those people? What other brands do they already like, so we can start to align ourselves with those kind of brands as well? So that's really where the start of the journey begins.
Yeah. So I guess when it comes to, say, the name or the brand itself, is it a case of thinking of something which is like punchy, which is really going to hit home to someone who needs to have that product? Is that what you would look for when you're working with someone?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We always look at either what the biggest challenges that brand's customers have, or also what the real result is. Obviously things like fitness, it's not just getting people into the gym, or making them be able to lift a certain weight. It's how they feel afterwards, and how that impacts their life, how much more confident they are, how it might improve their relationships because they feel physically and mentally stronger through going to the gym. So we kind of look at that real effect at the end of it, and sort of try to tap into that,
Yeah.
and create visuals and create stories around that helps connect that path and that journey.
Yeah. So once you've kind of mastered all that side of it, where would you start next? Would it be the color scheme and the brand, the actual logo itself, or would you go more towards the title and the name? What order would you start with?
Yeah, I always start with like a brand story.
Yeah.
Um, like with mine, my story is about being in Mexico, and how I was and how I came up with the name. Because it was, despite I don't have the best, or I don't have a typical cyclist's physique,
Yeah.
but every day I was one of the first people at camp, and the keen cyclists, they called me a total bandit, because I was always there first. They couldn't work it out, and they were like a little bit upset. And then, because obviously I'm in design, I just renamed myself a total brandit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got that as my kind of backstory, which, like I say, connects why there's this kind of Mexican theme to it. So the brand story is really the most important part, and that's how you connect with people. creating a logo and the colors and visuals actually comes much later down
Right. Okay.
in the chain. Yeah, you really need to get that story together. You need to work out your positioning in the
Yeah.
market as well. And looking at car manufacturers, quite an easy way to relate to that. So you've got like say Bentley and then you would maybe have Audi and then Volkswagen and maybe Kia at the end. And if you look at how those brands all position themselves, like you'll never see a Bentley advert talking about how economical they are, or it's got an extended warranty, because they're all about luxury and the experience. Whereas Kia, they will talk about their extended warranties and how efficient they are and things like that. So if you look at your own brand and you position yourself against your market place, it's working out where your brand fits so that you can decide, okay, which area do we want to talk about more? Like you say, are you just going to talk about luxury and experience? Or is it the actual kind of nuts and bolts that will kind of help your customers decide to choose your brand over the competition?
Mm.
Once you work that out, then you'll be able to use things like colors to influence that. So if you have say, for instance, a coffee brand that is got the most caffeine, it's like a real massive caffeine hit, you would want to have really bright colors and quite dynamic fonts that's got a lot of motion in it and things like that. So you can only start to create the visual side once you understand the positioning and how you want to influence your clients.
I mean, many years ago, I remember when I got into fitness, and I didn't invest in myself, certainly having coaches at the time. I remember, and I created Fat Loss Fitness at the time. And I remember people were coming to me for these quick sort of results. But my
Yeah,
story wasn't like that. Mine was very much about that low confident child, if you like. And then breakthrough was
yeah,
14, where he went jogging all the time to clear my mind. And then I got
yeah,
into fitness and then went towards being more towards physique and being healthy and fit. And then obviously when I got into fitness, I'm a very busy person. So
yeah,
obviously I then realised I was helping people with the same, who are
yeah,
also very busy, entrepreneurial type of people, working mums. So then it's taken a number of years to create that brand. But I think
yeah,
this is where it comes into where it's super important to have some sort of mentor coach. Because if I had a coach back then with Fat Loss Fitness, I probably would
yeah,
have skipped all these different brands what I had before, which has led
yeah,
towards me being Nathan Honus or the busy lifestyle coach. And I guess
yeah,
this goes on to the next bit of, I'm sure you get coached by someone. I do.
yeah.
We all need that someone to help us out, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been vital in my transformation as well. I mean, I went into coaching initially because I thought I had a bit of a business problem. But actually, when I delved into the coach, it was more of a me problem.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was like I had lots of limiting beliefs around it. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think there was enough clients out there. There was a real kind of scarcity kind of mindset. So through coaching, I kind of worked on that first before I started to solve the business problems. And it was amazing how much easier those business problems became once your mindset is in the right place and
yeah.
you start to understand that part of it as well. And like you say, even with brands as well, brands never really stay the same
No, yeah,
for long. It's always something that's evolving and changing. Because even I've got clients who initially, when they started off, they were just focusing on working, say, with women particularly. But over time, they've actually decided that they don't like working with women. They find it much more difficult,
yeah,
and naturally, they actually start to work with older men.
yes,
So then, obviously, the branding had to change to kind of reflect that, so that you kind of, like I say, when you go back to creating a brand that people hate, you want to create a brand that looks more masculine. It has a slightly older feel to it, so
yeah,
that you don't start, attracting 18-year-old girls, because that's the complete wrong demographic
yeah.
that you want. So branding is also something that you're constantly changing and evolving as your business changes and evolves as
Exactly. You
well.
can organically start changing. And it's only when
Yeah,
you look back, you go, okay, I can see I'm going towards this direction. So
Yeah.
whilst it's the same product, you almost want to reach a different audience. So this is where
Yes.
you have to maybe just see where you are at the
Yeah.
moment, because it's amazing how you can change, like you just said there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's something that you should be regularly assessing as well, even if it's quarterly or monthly. Any more than that is probably a bit too much, but kind of looking at like who you like working with is like a really important one, who you have the most impact on, and what other areas that you can start to grow into as well is really important to always be kind of almost taking a little of a half step back to kind of reflect and then take the next step of where your brand's going to be evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people are going to listen to this and really relate to that. There's some sort of mental block of maybe they're in a position where, you know what, they may not even listen to this right now. They might be wanting to have a business
Yeah,
and they've got their call and they know what they're doing, but something's holding them back, like a limiting belief.
yeah,
So when you take yourself back to Mexico and you created that name, and it took you 3 years to
yeah.
eventually create the actual business, what sort of factors come into it? Was it a case of you procrastinating? Was it because you was too comfortable what you were doing?
Yeah, I was still working, I was working with an agency. I was working remotely, and I kind of reduced my hours. So I was only really working 3 days a week at that point. So I had 2 days to kind of do my own thing. And the idea was I would kind of build that up and grow that over time. But like you say, yeah, being comfortable in like I knew I had this 3 days a week of work coming in. I knew that that would pay all my bills, and so I didn't have that real need to kind of go out there and do it. I was
Yeah.
kind of it was too comfortable for a while,
Yes.
and it probably took me a good 6 months to kind of realize that the reason I reduced my hours was so that I could develop my own business. And I ended up just not doing anything. I just
Mm.
stayed in this little comfortable zone for far too long. So yeah, that's being too comfortable over time eventually became uncomfortable because
Yeah.
I felt stuck. So it was
Been
a
stuck and
real
frustrated. Yeah.
yeah, frustration. That's a really good word to describe how I felt as well. I was kind of stuck and frustrated, but I'd created this to kind of do something else.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating that it took me 6 months to kind of realize that I wasn't doing anything about it.
Yeah. Especially, I know the bit where 'cause obviously you must have had the belief that you were looking to develop it because you dropped your hours down, like you said. But when it comes
Yeah,
down to it, you were still avoiding working on it. I
yeah.
wonder what's happening there. Was it just a case you just you was busy, or what was the limiting belief at that point? Was there anything you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, it probably, yeah, I was, like I say, when I look back and I did probably think, oh, I'm too busy and I was too tired and there wasn't enough hours in the day. But when I look back now at what I do and how I structure my days and my weeks and my months, I wasn't really doing very much
Yeah.
back then. Like I say, it was just really coming. I was just going through the motions a little bit. I was probably putting too much into my employed work and then almost taking a day off at the end of the week and doing other things and kind of just I almost look at it in a way of like as a footballer, like going from like playing Sunday league football to trying to get to the Premier League.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of maybe took the step of going from like completely amateur to kind of semi-amateur into
Yeah.
semi-pro. And I don't know, it just over time, I think just the frustration just made me go, right, okay, let's do the next
Yeah.
thing. As opposed to kind of just naturally kind of growing it. It was always stayed the same for a while and then I got frustrated and then took the next step up.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, someone listened to this and whether they're just starting out or they've got their business and they're frustrated, is there any sort of, if you like, golden nuggets you want to give them, which would potentially make them look for a coach, maybe yourself? Is there anything you can think of on top of your head, which maybe they might have been in the same position as you was in?
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I see people, especially who are start or wanting to start their own business, is they do focus on things like coming up with the name and coming up with a logo way too much. I've got an example that I have of it's two coffee brands.
Yeah.
showing they're very, very different in terms, like I was saying earlier, there's one it's kind of bright red and got lots of like sparks going off it.
Yes.
And there's one that's like a kind of muted green and sort of beige tone to it. And these two brands look completely different. But then when I tell people that the logo is exactly the same,
Ah,
the
yeah.
copy on it, they're both called Morning Blend, is exactly the same. And then the copy at the bottom is all exactly the same. And in a way, it's just to say that your logo's not that important
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can rebrand a whole business and keep the logo the same
Mm.
by looking at the colors, by looking at your ideal clients. And it's
Yeah.
the same with names. I know a lot of people kind of spend months and months trying to come up with the perfect name.
Yeah.
There never is a perfect name. There never is a perfect logo. There never is a perfect brand. It's just something that evolves. So my advice would be to just start.
Mm.
You can always come back and look at your logo and look at your branding. As we said earlier, especially the first year, 18 months, things will change and develop really, really quickly. And it might go in a completely opposite direction to what you thought. So just get it started, get moving, get some feedback, and maybe later on down the line, you can come back and look at your logo. You can come back and go, okay, now we've got a better idea of who our ideal clients are. Now we can start to connect with them. How does our brand start to look? And then you can start to evolve it. So yeah, the advice is just start. And if you're struggling with that part as well, is to concentrate on what you're good at. So instead of spending hours and hours on something like Canva trying to create
Yeah.
something for it, work with a designer or work with someone like myself to do that part so that you can be off and working out, like I say, creating your services and actually doing the work, and start to kind of outsource those little things there so that you can kind of move and progress much quicker.
Brilliant. And if someone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way of getting hold of you? Would it be the same as me on Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the place where I'm more active. So you can find me at Total Brandits, and also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is for my ideal clients and people that I want to work with. They're generally on LinkedIn. So if you look my name, Craig Gillespie or Craig Total Brandits, you'll be able to find me on there.
Nice one, brilliant. And of course, I'll put all that in this particular podcast slash it'll be on YouTube. But mate,
Yeah,
it's been great to speak to you. I've learnt a few bits myself, and no doubt we'll catch up again very soon.
yeah, no, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Speak to you soon. See you later.
Thanks.